Launched first session of this Lunch and Learn series. My name's Ken. I'm the Director of Student Engagement at Fuller. And joining me today also is my colleague and teammate, Alisa Spradley, and also Professor Jose Abraham. I'd like to introduce our office a little bit. Our office is designed to support Fuller students to make connections, make friends, to find your place that you feel you belong. And we constantly seek your feedback. And so please feel free to email us at student@fuller.edu. If you have any suggestions or questions, we're here for you. I'd like to introduce our Lunch and Learn series a little bit. This is a initiative suggested also by our beloved Dr. Goatley, our president at Fuller. And the strategy, the meaning behind it is to engage our global audiences, regardless you're in Pasadena, Texas, Arizona, or anywhere in the world or online. We would love for you to take this time to join us to hear one of our faculty to share their expertise. It will take about 20 minutes, and then you have 30 minutes to join the discussion with our speaker. And I'd like to thank the following offices to help this program happen. And our President Goatley and Dr. Kirsten Kim, thank you for your leadership. And also our Alumni Relations and the Fuller Foundation, Public Relations, Creative Services and Branding, Islamic Studies Center, and our entire Fuller community for making this Lunch and Learn possible. And without further ado, today we'll have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Jose Abraham. I'd like to have my colleague, Alisa Spradley, to introduce Professor Jose Abraham.
Thank you. Yes, so we are excited to have Dr. Jose Abraham with us. He has served on the faculty at Concordia University in Montreal for 9 years before coming to Fuller's School of Intercultural Studies in 2020. Dr. Abraham received his PhD from McGill University in Montreal and has taught in India and North America. He's an author, an ordained pastor, and is with us today to share his presentation with us. So we'd love to pass it off to you, Dr. Abraham, to share what you've come with prepared. So thank you.
So thank you, everyone, for coming. And it's known as Lunch and Learn, but I know that only those who are in California, it is lunchtime. For some others, it may be maybe supper, or maybe some of them are actually already night, maybe in another part of the world. So wherever you are, whatever you are doing, welcome to this series. I am extremely glad that I am the first person who is actually presenting in this series, and I'm grateful to Ken and Ashley for giving me this opportunity, and also for President Godley for making this available. And as you know, Islamic Studies is part of Fuller Theological Seminaries for a seminary for a very long time, more than 40 years. So we have 6 to 7 courses in Islamic Studies. I will be able to actually share more about that one maybe later after my presentation. So let me just begin my presentation. I just want to share my screen. Yeah, today I would like to talk briefly about pedagogical and missiological implications of decolonizing Islamic studies. And I have 3 parts for my lecture. So in part 1, I will be talking about Orientalism and the study of Islam. In part 2, I will be talking about what are various attempts for decolonizing Islamic studies, especially in the secular universities. And the part 3, I will be talking about what are the missiological implications if you really want to decolonize Islamic studies. So Orientalism historically played a pivotal role in shaping Western perceptions of Islam and Muslims. It emerged as a prominent academic discipline during the colonial era, characterized by the study of Eastern texts and ideas. However, Orientalism was not merely an objective pursuit of knowledge. Rather, it served to legitimize colonialism by framing Western attitude towards Orient, including Islam, within a Eurocentric lens. Scholars who engaged in Orientalist discourse, known as Orientalists, contributed to the construction of a narrative that reinforced Western superiority and justified imperialistic endeavors. Enlightenment era, epitomized by the influential figures such as René Descartes, ushered in the profound transformation of Western epistemology. Skepticism emerged as the foundational principle, challenging the entrenched traditional belief and practices rooted in faith. Descartes' renowned maxim, "I think, therefore I am," underscored the centrality of individual reason and rationality in the pursuit of truth. This shift had far-reaching implications for religious thought, as it precipitated a re-evaluation of the nature and role of religion in a society. As a consequence of this shift, the religions underwent a significant perceptual transformation. Previously perceived as a holistic system of belief and practices deeply embedded within the structures of power and authority, religion began to be conceptualized as an abstract and universal phenomenon grounded in individual rational faculties. This conceptual evolution, elucidated by scholars like Wilfred Canwell Smith, engaged a reductionist approach to the study of religion. Religion became narrowly defined as the examination of theology and scriptures, often neglecting the profound impact of rituals on human behavior and social dynamics. Yeah. So, moreover, the advent of colonialism exerted a further influence on Western perspectives on religion, particularly with the emergence of the category of world religions in the 18th and 19th centuries. This categorization facilitated the encapsulation of diverse religious tradition within standardized textbooks, fostering the erroneous belief that mastery of these textbooks equated to expertise in interpreting them. Consequently, this approach engendered the distorted views of non-Western religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. It is disproportionately emphasized doctrinal aspects while overlooking the rich tapestry of rituals, traditions intrinsic to this faith. So let me highlight the complexities inherent in understanding Islam and challenges posed by Orientalist interpretation. Muslim scholars delineate three dimensions to their faith: Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. Islam encompasses the performance of specific acts, including 5 pillars, such as a confession of faith, prayer, almsgiving, fasting, and pilgrimage. Iman entails faith in 6 articles, including a belief in God, angels, prophets, scriptures, and the day of judgment and the predestination. And the Ihsan, the third dimension, involves the living with a heightened awareness of divine presence. These 3 dimensions form the basis of 3 major institutions in Islam: Sharia, dealing with the Islamic law; theological and philosophical discourse, Kalam, encompassing Iman; and Sufism, representing the mystical traditions of Ihsan. While Sharia holds prominence among Muslims as a means of discerning and fulfilling divine will, theological and philosophical discourses are less emphasized. Orientalist interpretations often overlook these distinctions, presenting a skewed understanding of Islam. Inadequacy of Orientalist treatment of Islam is further evident in the scant attention given to Sharia in their writing. Upon examination, it becomes apparent that discussions on Sharia were minimized or omitted altogether. Some introductory books on Islam either completely ignored Sharia or allotted only brief mention to the topic. This perspective may be rooted in the absence of an equivalent concept to Sharia in Christianity, leading to its downplaying in Orientalist scholarship. Furthermore, Orientalist scholarship often portrayed Sufism, the spiritual dimension of Islam, as detached from the broader Islamic tradition, instead treating it as a mystical tradition shared among various religions, including Hinduism and Buddhism. Karl Ernst elucidates the phenomenon, which he termed as the Protestantization of Islam. Orientalists maintain that each religious tradition possessed distinct characteristics and principles. Consequently, Islam, perceived as characterized by legal rigidity, led to the divorce of Sufism, which lacks a legalistic approach from the broader Islamic framework. Protestant Christianity became the standard lens through which Orientalists interpreted all religions, including Islam. In Protestant Christianity, the Bible holds the paramount importance. Therefore, Orientalists assume that Quran, Islam's equivalent to the Bible, should hold similar significance for Muslims. As a result, much of the early scholarly inquiry into Islam focused predominantly on the Quran. However, Orientalists approached the Quran using methodologies akin to those employed in interpreting the Bible. This oversight resulted in a tendency to view Quran through the lens of Bible, leading to misrepresentation that portrayed Islam merely as a derivative of Christianity. Islam has been subjected to racialization and Orientalization within the framework of European colonialism, leading to the perception of stereotypes and misconceptions about Muslims. This categorization is rooted in racial theories that historically deemed Semitic people, including Muslims, as inferior, thus fueling narrative of Muslim violence and oppression. Throughout the history, medieval depictions of Prophet Muhammad often portrayed him as inherently violent, while Islamic contributions to art and architecture were frequently overlooked or downplayed. This Orientalist portrayal of Islam had far-reaching consequences, contributing to the proliferation of stereotypes linking Islam with terrorism, violence, and oppression of women. The Orientalist framing of Islam persists in contemporary society, exemplified by the phenomenon of Islamophobia in our globalized world. Islamophobia, in essence, is not simply a fear of Islam, but rather an irrational fear of a distorted and manufactured version of Islam. This manufactured Islam is divorced from its historical context, stripped of nuance, and portrayed in a sensationalized manner that distorts its true essence. As a result, Islamophobia perpetuates misconceptions and stereotypes about Islam and Muslims, instilling fear and prejudice in society. The perpetuation of Orientalist framing of Islam continues within Western academia, particularly in the field of Islamic studies. In her 2020 article, Elise Morstein-Frost sheds light on this issue by examining job advertisements for faculty positions in Islamic studies at various universities in the West. She highlights how these arts tend to prioritize specific regions such as the Middle East, languages primarily Arabic, and subjects focused on text when seeking candidates. Frost argues that these job arts often reinforce the inaccurate notions of what constitutes authentic Islam, to thereby perpetuating Orientalist stereotypes and biases. Let me quote a part of her article. Even though the Muslim world is incredibly diverse, in the Western academia, Islam has been associated with the Arabs, Arabic language, and the Quran. In other words, Islam has associated with one language, one ethnicity, and one geographical region of the world. So Islam equals Arabic plus Middle East plus text. The construction of Islam in the West reduces the richness of Islamic studies. It 1,500-year history, its linguistic cacophony, its global span, its racial and ethnic complexity, its myriad practices to Arabic, the Middle East, and textuality. It marginalized Shi'i, Sufi, Black, and African American, South Asian, West African Islamic traditions and denied them a deviant, inauthentic. Thereby, it constructs a normative Islam, which is Sunni and Arabic-centered. The irony is palpable. Job advertisement for the position in Islamic studies, a field dedicated to challenging stereotypes and biases, often end up reinforcing those very stereotypes. In short, Orientalist framework of European colonialism has played a central role in shaping perceptions of Islam as a racialized and Orientalized category. By positioning Islam outside the realms of European and Western civilization and rigidly tying to a specific markers, Orientalist discourse has perpetuated stereotypes and limited understanding of Islam within academic and social context. Recognizing and challenging this Orientalist construct is essential in fostering a more nuanced and inclusive understanding of Islam and its manifestation. So let me move to the second part of my presentation. So decolonizing Islamic studies. What are the attempts that is actually done for decolonizing Islamic studies? Orientalism as a field of study encountered a substantial challenge with the publication of Edward Said's groundbreaking work, Orientalism, Western Conceptions of the Orient in 1978. Said's seminal critique dissected Western perceptions of the East, exposing how entrenched Orientalist discourse served to legitimize colonialism and bolster Western political dominance. Said's work not only sparked a paradigm shift, but also laid the groundwork for the development of post-colonial studies, which sought to explore multiple approaches to studying Muslims and Islam beyond the narrow confines of Orientalist perspective. Post-Orientalism emerged as a response, emphasizing the need to understand Muslims within their historical, political, economic, and social context, leading to the integration of social science methodologies into Islamic studies. As we discussed, in Orientalist writing, Islam is often associated with the Arabs, the Arabic language, and the Middle East. But in reality, Arabs represented only a small fraction of the global Muslim population. Non-Arab Muslims outnumber Arabs significantly, with the majority residing outside of the Middle East. Approximately 1/3 of the Muslims reside in South Asian countries like India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, which were unified until 1947 under the British rule. Another third of Muslims reside in South Asian countries, with Indonesia being the largest Muslim nation globally, followed by India and Pakistan. If we were to draw a geographical boundary encompassing South and Southeast Asia, we would find the majority, 2/3 of the Muslims reside within this area. The remaining third of the Muslims live across Africa, the Middle East, and other parts of the world. Remarkably, more than half of the global Muslim population reside in just 8 countries, including Indonesia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nigeria, Iran, Turkey, and Egypt. It is noteworthy that only Egypt among these top 8 countries has a predominantly Arabic-speaking population. The linguistic and cultural diversity among the most populous Muslim nations is striking, with the languages like Turkish, Persian, Urdu, Malay, Bhasha Indonesian, and even English being spoken by Muslims worldwide. Beyond language and culture, a significant sectarian divide exists within Muslim world, with Sunnis comprising roughly 80% and Shias 18% of the Muslim population. So this perspective challenges the perception of Islam as a monolithic tradition. Daniel Brown contends the idea of Islam with a capital I is a false construct. We should rather speak of many different lowercase Islams in plural, which must be examined as separate phenomena. Rather than essentializing Islam as a singular, trans-historic entity, scholars now appreciate the multitude of interpretations and practices that exist within Muslim communities worldwide. This recognition is critical in challenging stereotypes and misconceptions about Islam and fostering a more comprehensive understanding of its complexity. So central to the post-Orientalist approach is a recognition that Islam is a discursive tradition. Understanding Islam as a discursive tradition means appreciating the ways in which its interpretation and expressions are shaped by socio-political, economic, and cultural factors. For instance, the diverse interpretations of Quran and Hadith among Muslims in different regions reflect the influence of local context and historical experiences. In comprehending the vast diversity and unity among Muslims, critical inquiries arise concerning authenticity, interpretation, and orthodoxy within Islam. Daniel Brown articulates this dynamic interplay, stating, a relatively small population of Arabs exerts an outsized influence on the religious and intellectual culture of a far larger population of non-Arab Muslims. The result is a dynamic interaction between a centripetal pull towards uniformity and a centrifugal forces of cultural and linguistic diversity. Throughout Islamic history and continuing into its contemporary periods, Muslims' practice have been constantly shaped by local environments, while local variations of Islam are constantly under pressure to conform to a uniform standard. Moreover, a post-Orientalist approach emphasizes the interconnectedness of Islam with other religious traditions, cultures, and ideologies. Recognizing the fluidity and adaptability of religious beliefs and practices, scholars acknowledge the influence of cross-cultural interactions on the evolution of Islamic thought. This broader perspective encourages scholars to explore the intersections between Islam and other religious traditions, fostering dialogue and mutual understanding. So in this regard, the following quote from Diana Eck is actually important. So she mentioned, religions are not like stones passed from hand to hand through the ages. They are dynamic movements, more like rivers, flowing, raging, creative, splitting, and converging. This perspective challenges static representations of Islam and highlights its capacity for innovation and adaptation over time. By viewing Islam as a dynamic and evolving phenomenon, scholars can either appreciate its resilience and the relevance in diverse cultural context. So let me move to the third part of my lecture, the last part, the missiological implications of decolonizing Islamic studies. So over the past 2 decades, significant criticism has been directed towards missionary efforts among Muslims spanning previous centuries. It has been argued that missionaries often fail to appropriately contextualize the Christian message. Operating from a colonial mindset and a position of power, missionaries frequently neglected to immerse themselves in the lived experiences and traditions of Muslims. Without this empathetic understanding, it becomes challenging to grasp the belief and practices that Muslims hold near. Only by gaining insight into what is valued by Muslims can we effectively communicate the gospel in a manner that resonates with them, utilizing their language and a cultural context. So in this regard, in this context, the words of J. Dudley Woodbury holds particular significance. Any meaningful dialogue with Muslims needs to start by walking with them, listening to them, and asking them questions. This statement is also echoed by Terry Mugg, who argues that in order to contextualize the gospel, we should fully enter into the religious and cultural world of other people, doing religious thinking alongside them, using their terms, asking their questions, using methods common to their way of thinking religiously. By aligning our thinking and methods with those of the communities we seek to engage, we can bridge the cultural divide and effectively convey the message of Jesus Christ. This approach emphasizes the importance of humility, empathy, cultural sensitivity, and engagement with Muslims. Ultimately, by walking alongside Muslims, listening to their stories, and embracing their cultural and religious context, we can embody the love and compassion of Jesus Christ in our intellectual engagements. So while the academic course provides a foundational understanding of Islam's grammar and vocabulary, engaging with Muslim believers on a personal level is indispensable for comprehending their beliefs and practices. Interacting with the Muslims offers a unique opportunity to grasp their perspective on life and emotions that drive them. I had the privilege of learning from Professor Roland E. Miller, a Lutheran missionary who dedicated 25 years to serve the Muslim community in Kerala, South India. Following his retirement, he authored this book, Muslim Friends, Their Faith and Feelings, advocating for friendship as the most effective means of learning about Islam. Professor Miller emphasized that while factual study is crucial for understanding Islam, friendship plays an equally vital role. He argued that friendship provides unparalleled access to the personal realm, where individuals openly express their deepest thoughts, emotions, and faith. Through genuine friendship with Muslims, one can move beyond superficial interactions and gain insight into the lived experience, contributing to a more nuanced and authentic comprehension of Islam. So globalization has facilitated interactions among diverse cultures and religions, leading to the transformation of European and North American cities into increasingly multicultural, multi-religious environments. Among the immigrant population contributing to this diversity are Muslims who arrived in the West like migrants from other parts of the world, bringing with them their own religious and cultural heritage. Muslims often encounter challenges integrating into Western societies where the traditions are not always fully appreciated or understood. As Muslims navigate the complexities of assimilation and adaptation in their new environments, the issue of hospitality emerges as a significant concern. The challenge of hospitality is particularly pronounced in the context of Muslim migration in the West due to prevailing stereotypes, misconceptions, and fears surrounding Islam and Muslims. Negative portrayals in media, political rhetoric, and societal attitudes can contribute to a climate of hostility and suspicion towards Muslim immigrants, hindering their integration and a sense of belonging in the adopted countries. Orientalism has undeniably exerted a significant influence on missionary endeavors among Muslims, often fostering a misguided approach that expects Muslims to abandon their cultural heritage and adopt a foreign culture. Rather than imposing foreign cultural norms, missionaries should seek to understand and respect the cultural diversity within a Muslim community. So central to this understanding is a recognition that culture plays a vital role in shaping individual and collective identities. Culture provides meaning, shapes sensibilities, and fosters a sense of belonging. It's a complex system of values, beliefs, and customs, and traditions that reflect the collective life of a community. Within this framework, individuals derive their identity from their perception in social relationship and interaction within their cultural context. So in essence, individuals are not isolated entities, but are intricately interconnected with their communities and cultures. The self is not an isolated construct, but is formed and maintained through communicative relationship with the others within the community. Therefore, attempts to separate individuals from their cultural context not only overlook the significance of culture, but also undermine the inherent interconnectedness between individuals and their communities. The early Christian community provides a compelling example of how faith in Jesus Christ can coexist with the existing cultural and religious identities. Jesus and his disciples were Jews, and early Christians of the first few decades continued to maintain their Jewish heritage while embracing Jesus as the Messiah. This continuity with their Jewish roots was evident in their retention of Hebrew worship forms and practices akin to a sect within Judaism. Despite their devotion to Jesus, the early Christians did not sever their ties to Judaism. Instead, they continued to practice participate in local synagogues and temple rituals, while also gathering for fellowship and breaking bread in their homes. This understanding is perfectly relevant in the context of witnessing to Muslims, where cultural identity holds significant importance. So, drawing upon this model, the concept of bypassing, as articulated by Donald Larson, become pertinent. Bypassing suggests that Muslims and non-Muslims from different cultural backgrounds can enter into a shared experience of the new humanity described in Ephesians 2:15 without the need to assimilate into each other's cultures beforehand. This concept emphasizes the universality of the Christian message and the transformative power of faith in Christ to transcend cultural barriers. So in conclusion, my lecture has brought attention to three critical issues pertaining to the academic study of Islam and the engagement with the Muslim communities. Firstly, it is imperative to acknowledge that elements of Orientalist perspective persist within the academic study of Islam. These perspectives, rooted in colonial legacies and power dynamics, can perpetuate stereotypes and misconceptions about Islam and Muslims. Secondly, efforts have been made within secular academia to decolonize our understanding of Islam and Muslims. These endeavors seek to challenge Eurocentric biases, incorporate diverse perspectives, and foster respectful engagement across religious and cultural boundaries. It is essential to embrace and support these initiatives to promote a more nuanced and inclusive understanding of Islam. Thirdly, as individuals called to serve Muslims, it is crucial to prioritize the cultivation of genuine friendship and relationship. By building trust and a rapport with the Muslim communities, we create opportunities to share the message of the gospel in a culturally sensitive manner. Rather than imposing foreign cultural norms, we should seek to facilitate dialogue and engagement that honors and respects the cultural identities of Muslim individuals. In doing so, we can foster an environment where Muslims feel valued, understood, and empowered to explore the transformative message of the gospel within the context of their own cultural heritage. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Professor Jose Abraham, and it was amazing lecture, and thank you for shorten the whole study into such a short amount of time. And now I'd like to invite our audience to participate in the discussion with our highly regarded scholar, Professor Jose Abraham, and to share your thoughts and then to have a discussion with our professor. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and Alisa will share and read it out aloud and to everyone.
While
Questions?
people are taking a moment to think about their questions that they would like to ask Dr. Jose Abraham, again, you can put those in the chat box and then I'll read those out and he'll respond to them. I have a question that came to mind during your presentation. So you said, Dr. Abraham, that we often as Christians view the Quran with the same framework as the Bible, and that's the way that we mishandle the Quran. And I was wondering if you could share more about how we might look at the Quran and hold it in its own, like hold it the way that Muslims would hold it. What would it look like to respect the Quran as a Muslim would understand the Quran and not put the Bible on it?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. It's a very important question. Thank you for raising that one. So I think here the key the answer to the question is actually to understand what is the place of a Quran within Islamic tradition. Is it actually so that means each religious tradition is actually a whole in itself, and every element has actually a part to play. So Quran has a part to play within Islamic tradition. So you cannot take out only Quran from Islam and then actually study Quran and then try to understand what Muslims believe and how Quran actually inform their practices. So I think 2 points I just want to make. One, Quran is not the only scripture in Islamic tradition. So Muslims also have actually a large volume of books known as hadiths. These are actually the traditions of the Prophet. So that the question is, we don't have anything equivalent to hadith actually in Christianity. So the question is, how do we understand the relationship between Quran and hadith? That is actually one question. Do you really actually pay attention to that one when you actually take only the Quran and then try to understand what Muslims believe and practice? The second thing is actually for Muslims, the understanding, that means the intellectual understanding of Quran is not the only thing that actually matters. For them, Quran is actually the word of God. So that's the reason why even though only 15% of the Muslims are actually Arabs and 85% of the Muslims are non-Arabic speaking Muslims, they all memorize actually the Quran. That means 85% of the Muslims, they don't really understand actually what is written. That is not the reason why they are actually memorizing. They are memorizing because they want to recite the Quran on a daily basis, not so much to understand the Quran. It's a very different approach to the Quran than how we actually read the Bible on a daily basis and then try to imitate what is actually written there. So I think the approach to Bible and approach to the Quran is actually very different. So the question is how we are going to actually do it. Do we need to actually pay attention to the Muslims' approach to the Quran before actually we use it as a book and then appropriate it and then try to study from our own perspective? I think these are some of the sensitive issues that we need to actually pay attention when we are approaching the Quran and also maybe approaching Islam.
Thank you. Hannah has a question that she would like to ask next. I invite you to unmute Hannah and ask your question.
Hello, Dr. Abraham. This is Hannah. I have some question, and also thank you for your lectures. And I do really agree that we, as a Christian, we need to know the diversity of Islam. And Muslims, they are the religious adherents, and apparently they are also different from what they're teaching in reality. So I do agree that the contextualization is needed to embrace their cultural historical background and mystical aspect, as you mentioned, the Sufism. I have two questions. First, as you already know, Al-Tawhid, monotheism, that worldview actually requires an Arab-oriented and Arab-centered culture. That superiority is already embedded in their whole cultures. So I don't think that's actually imposed by Orientalist view. So without understanding the Arabic, like without the high levels of understanding the Arab language, it's actually very hard to interpret an exegesis of the Quran. So it's just based on my understanding, like all those Arab speakers, even though they are not the majority, but they have a very high pride, and also like without understanding the text traditional Arab Fusa, it's hard to understanding, as you say, in the majority, they don't really understand, just recite the Quran. So that's why they are not a majority in the North Africa and Middle East, but they have the sort of the majority. They have their voice because they know the real Quran, the origin. And so, what do you think? Like even we need to know the diversity, but they are really focusing and still really holding that Arab-centered ideology. So what do you see? You know, how can we make a balance, like their Arab centrism and those majority of the non-Arab world? And second, my question is, because I was expecting like a pedagogical implication. I mean, it was very insightful about your mythological implication, but I was thinking like, so even we try to contextualize the Islamic studies and understand the broadened view of their Muslim, the practice and ritual, but how can we approach pedagogically, like not just teaching those materials and Quran and Hadith, but like, how can we make more and a deeper understanding, like through the different approach of teaching? Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. I think both are very important questions. So I think for concerning the first question, I have two responses. One is actually I quote in my lecture. I actually quoted Daniel Brown in order to talk about what is the meaning of orthodoxy within Islam, or how orthodoxy is actually maintained within Islam. So I said that there are a century petal force. That means there is actually a force from outside, and then from within, and then there is a force from outside. The force from within is actually what you are explaining. So that means the Arabs, they are only 15% or maybe 20% of the population, but then all the scriptures and the Hadith, Quran, and also not only Hadith and Quran, the early theological developments, the legal developments, many of the books that is actually written on Sufism, they all are actually in Arabic. So that means, so this is the force that is within. That means there is much more. So even though 80% of the Muslims actually live with outside of this central heartland of the Islam, there is actually a force which actually asking them to conform. That means the rest of the Muslims to conform these standards. At the same time, so that means no one can actually reject that one. No one can say that you can understand without actually studying Arabic. It is not possible. At the same time, we also need to pay attention to the force from outside. That means Islam is also actually interacting with the local traditions, local cultures, that means something that is known as the halal in certain places. It's not actually halal in another place. The question is from where they got this idea. Is it from the Quran or Hadith? Not from the Quran or Hadith. It's because of so many reasons. Certain things are considered as permitted. Certain things are considered as not permitted. So I think as missiologists, if you pay only attention to these forces within, then you actually you don't pay attention to the forces outside. The question is how you can have a balanced view of these forces within and forces outside. I think that is the question. So that's why that's one of the reasons why I brought that issue of job advertisements for the Islamic studies positions. That means most of the universities, they want to teach only the Quran or the Hadith, and only anything that is related with the Arabic or with the Arabs or with the Middle East. So then we are actually losing the focus of 80% of the Muslims, those who actually live outside of this tradition. I think that is the one thing that you need to remember. The other thing is something that is actually not familiar for most of the Christians. That means if you haven't actually studied Islam. So for Muslims, much more important is actually what is actually legal, what is permitted and what is not permitted. So these are the categories of not theology, but these are the categories of law. So we don't have a law actually in Christianity. We don't have something known as Christian law. We only have Christian theology. But I think on a day-to-day basis, the Muslims' lives are actually more controlled, or maybe actually more shaped by legal thinking than actually theological thinking. That means if most of the Arabic writings, most of the theological writings are actually in Arabic, that is not what really actually shape the daily lives of Muslims. What really shapes the daily lives of Muslims is actually the legal thinking. And many of these legal thinking are actually very much shaped by the local context. That is the reason why I told you that a food that is actually considered as halal in one context is not the food that is considered as halal in another context. Maybe because only those foods are available, or maybe those things are actually available in a particular context, and people need to pay attention to that one. So unless actually the missiologists pay attention to what is known as Sharia, or what is known as some legal the discussions among Muslims, we don't really understand actually how the Muslim mind is actually working. That means if you pay only attention to the Quran, Hadith, and theological thinking, that is not what really shape the Muslim the mind. So Muslim mind is also, or maybe it's mostly shaped by this legal thinking. I think that is what we need to remember. So now the question is, the second question, if I understood correctly, then the question is, what is its implication for our theological studies? I would say that its implication is that we need to study Quran. There is no doubt about that. We need to study Hadith. We need to study Arabic. All these things we need to pay attention to. But if you don't actually pay attention to the Muslims, those who don't speak Arabic, like what about 1/3 of the South Asian Muslims? They don't speak Arabic. They speak actually Urdu. Or what about 1/3 of Muslims live in Southeast Asia? So now the question is our commitment only to this 20% of the Muslims who live in the Middle East, or do we have actually also a commitment to 80% of the Muslims live outside of the Middle East? Then we also need to give skills for our students to familiarize themselves about contextualizing the gospel in those contexts, and also serving actually Muslims, those who don't speak actually Arabic. I think that's the way I am thinking about your second question. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah, for your questions. At this point, we don't have any other messages in the chat, but if anyone else would like to unmute and ask a question themselves, we also welcome you to share a question in the chat or to unmute and ask a question.
Sorry, because I think the last question is not about the theological, but I was asked about the pedagogical implication. It's like how we can kind of teach, like based on our understanding, like if we extend our understanding for the Islamic contextualization, then how can we actually teach in a different way? Because I was actually expecting the pedagogical approach, because it was actually posted on the flyer. So sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I think pedagogy is actually looking at, so that was part of the second part of my lecture. That means paying attention to what is happening actually in the secular academia, especially in interpreting the Islamic tradition. For example, using the social science methodologies in understanding actually Islam. That means not paying attention only to the text, but trying to understand actually Muslim society. So in order to do that one, so Fuller is actually a leader in anthropology of Islam. So that means anthropology is not so much actually studying the Quran, but studying actually the Muslims as a society. I think that is one way in which pedagogy can be actually shaped. The other one is actually there is a lot of reinterpretation about the classical the history of Islam. For example, what happened during the early conquest? How do we understand what is actually the contemporary historians are actually talking about that one, and how it is actually different from Orientalist interpretations. Or pay attention to what is known as the golden age of Islam, where actually Muslims contributed to the Greek knowledge, Greek the science, and all kinds of scientific knowledge that we have today. The Arabs also contributed to that one. I think those are some of the pedagogical issues that we need to actually think about in when teaching about Islam. I don't know whether, Hannah, I answered your question.
It looks like she shared in the chat. Oh, go for it, Hannah.
No, I say thank you.
I'm looking forward to actually interacting with you more, maybe later.
Great. It looks like we have another question for you in the chat. Satish, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, asks, is there precedence of Muslims settling peacefully in a different culture? Even in India, they are settled peacefully because Hindus leave them alone to practice their religion any way they want.
So, Satish, I think some of these things are actually certainly based on how you are interpreting the history. But from my understanding, that means if you pay attention to the pedagogy that I was actually talking to Hannah, so many of the researchers that is actually done recently is talking about this the peaceful coexistence of the Muslims in different places. For example, even in India, you know that Muslims actually ruled for 800 years. And still, actually, Muslims are an extremely tiny minority in India. Only 14% of the population is actually Muslims. So that means if the general understanding that Islam spread actually in India by sword, that's not really explaining the percentage of the Muslims actually in India today. And also, if you study actually how Islam actually spread in India, especially through Sufis, then you will understand that it was not really actually a violent confrontation between Muslims and Hindus in India. That is also true with actually in Middle East and in many other parts of the world. And you will understand that when when Jews were actually chased out of Spain in the 14th or 15th century, and where they actually settled is actually in the Middle East. So under the Ottomans were actually more hospitable to the Jews than actually the Christians in the Spain. So I think so our understanding that Islam is really violent and Muslims cannot actually coexist with any of the non-Muslims in the world is very much actually an Orientalist interpretation. And we need to actually pay attention by focusing on the context. Every context is actually different. We need to pay attention to the history, and certainly you'll get actually a different interpretation than this blanket statement saying that Islam is associated with violence.
Great, thank you. Satish, if that fully answers your question, looks like Satish says thank you as well. Then we'll ask our next question from Anish. Anish asks, thank you, Professor, for the presentation. You recently visited Egypt, a center of Islamic academia. Have you encountered how Islamic scholars view Christian scholarship, and how progressive did you find them to be? Islam as a missionary religion will also like Christians teaching how to reach Christians. Any light on that?
Yeah, so I think that is a very good question. And recently we were the faculty members, me and Joseph Cumming, we were the two faculty members actually was part of this experience. Then we also had actually a number of students, maybe some of the students also are part of this experience, so this conversation here. So I think what we experience is that it's how Islamic scholars view Christian scholars and scholarship, and how progressive did they find them to be. So I think what we learned, or what I actually learned from that experience is that Islam is also a missionary religion. There is no question about that. So that means just like we are actually so eager to propagate the gospel. I think that is exactly the way Muslims also want to actually propagate their tradition. I would say that the way in which we think about what is the relevant missiological response in a context. I don't think that I found something very similar with Muslim scholars saying that we need to really understand Christianity from the perspective of the Christians and then try to actually engage with them. But at the same time, I also want to mention that one of the professors who actually taught us, so all the professors who were teaching were from Al-Azhar University in Cairo. Al-Azhar is actually one of the flagship institutions among Muslims. So one of the professors named Dr. Gamal Muhammad, he did his master's and also PhD in London. And his focus was actually on Catholic theology. He wanted to actually compare Catholic theology with Asherism. So that means he really engaged with Catholic traditions and Catholic theology, tried to understand in what way Catholic traditions or the discussions about the sovereignty of God and some of those issues actually reflect in Asherite theology or in Islamic theology. I had one student, or I have a colleague actually when I was doing my PhD. He's a Muslim from Turkey. he did his PhD actually in Pauline thought. So, but there are not so many people like that. So that means that compared to the Christian scholars who focus on Islamic studies, compared to that, there may be only very few. But if you so what I'm trying to say is that there is no need to conclude that there is no attempt from Muslims. Certainly there may be a few, but compared to what Christians are actually trying to do, especially trying to think about what is a relevant missiological approach, I don't think that there is an equal kind of consideration or maybe attention that that you can actually find among Muslims.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Abraham. It sounds like Anish said thank you as well for answering his question. And thank you all for joining us at this Lunch and Learn. It looks like we're nearing the 1 o'clock hour Pacific time. I'm sure people are joining from all around the world, so different time frames. This is going to be a series that we have every month, so keep your eye out for an email or in the newsletter to hear about our next Lunch and Learn series. Dr. Abraham, it was great to learn from you today. Thank you for kicking it off for us. You did an amazing job, and we learned a lot. So thank you so much, and thank you all for joining. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
If you have any question regarding Islamic Studies Center, please reach out to Dr. Jose Abraham. And I'd also like to give a thank you, extend a thank you to our president, Dr. Gottlieb's support, and he's also here with us today and throughout the whole lecture. Thank you very much for being here, Dr. Gottlieb. And thank you, everyone. And please look out for the next lecture next month. Have a great day.